At least it's morning where I am, wherever you are. Hopefully, you're doing well. For me, this is a quick live today. I want to touch on a few things that happened. As we all know, this is a big week for track and field as well. So I'm sticking to track and field today, but you can also switch it up however you want to do it. The World Indoor Championships starts this week. Not particularly excited the way I usually am for World Indoors, or at least in the last couple of years. I don't know if it's because of the European Indoor that just wrapped up last week as well, and so you get a sense that not everybody's going for this competition, but it will be fun and excited. It starts on Friday or on the 21st. I guess it depends on where you are, and we'll be doing some watch alongs for that, some live sessions for that as well, and covering a few things. But I want to spend the bulk of this live talking about three junior athletes, you want to say, or younger athletes in particular. There are some things that happened in the last couple of days that you want to reflect on. It's not always my thing to talk a lot about athletes that are young, but it's important because if you give them the spotlight sometimes and you talk a lot of them about them, then pressure can comes. But pressure's in the sport, so it doesn't really matter. So I want to talk about Gout Gout first, because, and shout out to Chris from Australia, who's a big fan of the channel. He did remind me about this meet. I didn't get to watch it live or anything like that, but I did see Gout Gout's performance. And as we know, I didn't know much about Gout Gout until about a year or so ago, or probably a little bit more than a year. And I did get to see him at the World uh, U20 Championships last year, and you know it wasn't his finest moment, and it was also cold. It was also the end of that season, but there's a tremendous talent there. And so the kid goes and runs 20.05 with a positive win there, 1.2 in the heats. Then he goes back and goes sub 20, running 1998, but seriously win aided there. But the thing that I want to talk about Gout Gout is not necessarily his, and I'm just checking the chat to see if anyone's there. Yeah, it's not necessarily how fast he went, because we know he's talented. There's a lot of stories about him, his family, how they got to Australia. He comes from a line of athletes, and there's talk that his sister might be even much more capable than him, and that kind of stuff. But back to Gout, he he looks as if he's an improved athlete from what we saw last year, especially just from a visual test. So when I looked at that race and I watched it a number of times, and I'm not going to give you a super great analysis here, but what I saw was an athlete that had an improved uh, running on the curve. So his technique on the curve looked much better. He showed more control and more efficiency than we've seen before. I'm not saying he's ready, because he's not ready yet. Uh, there's a lot of things that you would think needs work, especially his arm mechanics. It's not great. Something with his knees as well. But the raw talent was always there, but the raw talent is starting to work a little bit. And he's a very slender lad, so you anticipate that at some point he's going to need some to get bigger. But he's a young lad. He's very, very young, so we can't even think about him in that kind of capacity. How fast can he go? I have no idea. No one knows. But he's certainly a big talent that we're spending a little bit of time thinking about him. When you think, are we putting him in the same level as a Bolt or Aaron Knighton or whoever you want to link? We don't want to put that kind of pressure, but when you see him at his age and what he's capable of doing, and there's a element of, like, I'm good for it, right? That's the thing I also like about Gout Gout. He's a bit fearless. He has a showmanship potential there as well. So for the sport, he's certainly one that we want to see continue. And I think they're handling him well there in Australia. I think he was out of the country for a little bit for some training as well. So at some point, there will be a decision to be made. I remember listening to his agent maybe a few months ago, I think, and his agent was saying that there is a stage plan for his development. So they're not thinking about he's ready to go dominate the world or anything like that, or making sure he's going to do one, two doubles or anything. They are handling him with care. They're thinking about his long term potential because from their minds, they're seeing that he's a generational talent. And I think he is. So I like that. But big potential, obviously, for this season if he consistently improves to start, dipping under that 20 seconds consistently. I will say, like, when you think about the landscape of the 200 meters, I mean, if he can get himself down to like a 19.8 this season and run it uh, decently, he will make the Australia team. I think that's a given. The question is, what will that look like going into the World Championships in Tokyo in September? And so the question there is, can they just develop him, run him sparingly? He's a kid; he doesn't need to be running everywhere. And if he can make a senior team like that, and he can go there and he can learn from that, then that can be a springboard into what ultimately will look like an Olympic push in not too long from now, right? And that's where he could potentially announce himself on the global stage in a big way in Los Angeles. I suspect that might be their plan. I don't know for sure, but let's hope that it is. And I think he is a splendid athlete. I like him. We saw him before, and I'm liking what I'm seeing. There's not much you can complain about if you're being honest. That he's a splendid athlete. Hopefully his journey continues. His human interest angle is very compelling. We know this. His story is one of overcoming and a bright future ahead. So I was well pleased to look at his uh, his performance this week, and I like what I saw. All right, I want to stay, I guess, with another junior talent that we saw as well at the Peru Games last year, and talk a little bit about the South African 100-meter specialist there, Bayanda Walaza. That kid we know was quick. He performed really well last year. Ran a 9.99 100 meters, you know, bit winded, but nothing out of the ordinary there. It's just point 0.7, so there is some assistance there, but nothing to complain about. And the thing that I like about this kid is that he's also fearless. We saw South Africa doing well at the World Under 20 as well. Special talent, it seems like. Breaking that 10-second barrier is important. But this is where they have to handle him very well. And now is the time to do it. Only because I looked at this and I looked at what I saw last year at the World Championships, and he has an odd running style. He doesn't have this classic smooth 100-meter style. And you don't necessarily have to have that. You don't have to be perfect, like textbook perfect. But he has some big fundamental flaws that require some level of work right away, right? And thanks everyone for joining in. I'm using a new system, so I'm not quite sure if the chat system is working. If it's not, then I apologize. So back to Walaza. Uh, the guy has serious mechanical issues when it comes to running the 100 meters. The current technique is not work. That is not how you want to think about it. When I look at the race and I watch it a number of times, and if you go back to last year as well, or anytime you've ever seen him run, you can see these inefficient stride patterns there, right? So there's a exaggerated leg movement. One leg is not looking the same as the other. That is a inefficient stride pattern. They have to sort that out. Secondly, that head bobbing it's like can probably contribute to a lot of energy loss, I suspect, whatever these technical coaches might want to say. I think that has to go. That is easier to fix than I suspect the leg movement. But overall, his efficiency needs a lot of refinement. Lots of potential, but they got to work on that. Now, and they have to work on it now because he's what, 19. Now is the time he's trying to think about transitioning. Maybe a lot of people talking about, is he heir apparent to Akini Sambini? He's he the one to put South Africa back up there. Who knows, right? Changing his style is what you need to do, and they have to do it fast. I don't understand why it hasn't really necessarily improved from last year to this year, because, and forgive me if it's improved, I just haven't seen it enough. The question is, people will often say, when do you want to change this thing, right? When do you want to improve on an athlete's efficiency? And sometimes we can go back to some of these great all-time runners and think about it differently. But you think about Michael Johnson, he had an unconventional form. But Clyde Hart, if you remember these things from the 90s, and he spoke about it, they didn't think as if it was doing, his arm movements was kind of weird. He had a little out chest that was not as gracious as you want as a beautiful sprinter. But it didn't do anything to impact him negatively, right? He didn't do anything to impact him negatively. So in a situation like that, uh, we just they allowed it. I think I'm getting some comments here. Let me see if I can work this new system here. If I don't work it, I will. I Yeah, I can get this on the screen. How are you doing, Clip? Big up to you as well. Hopefully you're doing well. Yeah. So yeah, back to Walaza and even the Michael Johnson comparison. It's not the same comparison. I'm just using that as I'm trying to remember a prominent athlete, and I'm not putting the kid in anywhere close to Johnson's level. Just for the purists out there, is that when you saw something that you wanted to consider, maybe we can change it, they didn't. In this case, I really think that he needs to change his style. His style has to change. Uh, I definitely think they need to work on that. The raw speed is undeniable, but they need some coaching on the biomechanics, a lot of work there. And I think that could take him to the next level. If these improvements are made, then he could be a global sprinting threat within the next few years. They also have to think about, can we get him to a point where he he can be very competitive getting into the Olympic Games next year. I suspect he could probably get on a team to the World Championships this year. I don't know them. I don't know their plans, but they have to fix this. It needs to fix, because he looks it doesn't look like as if it's helping him, and that's my point. If it was helping him, then whatever, right? But there's a lot of work that needs to be done there, and I hope that they can get on that very soon. But the kid looks really good, annihilated that field, and what can we say? All right, I want to talk about Isabella Whittaker. Let's go to Isabella Whittaker, because the NCAA Indoor Championships was last weekend. There's a lot of splendid performances there as well, but I want to single her out in some interesting ways. So Isabella Whittaker, to me, performance of the week, just at the NCAA Indoor Championships held in Virginia Beach. I should have gone to that, but anyway, ran a time of 49.24 seconds over the women's 400 meters. That is the second fastest time in history. That's only outside of Femke Bol's 49.17 world record. So she's the second fastest woman in history, Whittaker, that is. And broke the NCAA record, the North American record. It's a remarkable race, and I watched that race, and look, high competition was there, because but Butler, you had to, Butler won the first heat, I think, or heat two, sorry. Whitaker won heat one, but because they did do these staggered things in the NCAA. So you had to run with a mindset of like, you have to take it out. And I think she ran for her life. So, there was no strategy there in terms of like, do I have to watch out for some of my main competitors? I'm just going to kill them. And the woman had a really strong first 200. I took control early from what I recall. I watched it a few times. And she maintained a really, really good speed, separated from the rest. You know, she had time to look over her shoulder, coming around just to check. And then she just pulled away from all of them. And in that process delivered a fantastic performance. In that process delivered, all-time stuff. And again, shout out to what's happening there in Arkansas, coming from this long line of high quality 400-meter running there. But our step up from last year to this year is remarkable. And I think about what Whittaker can deliver later on the season, right? The question is not whether she will beat her outdoor personal best, right, which is like 50 point something. It's whether it's not going sub 50 is the question, is will she go sub 49, right? And I think if she's injury free, if she continues this way, then we're looking at a sub 49 athlete. And that would not be out of step with what we've seen with some of the athletes coming out, and Nikisha Price or so from last year, but uh, she's the next one there, and I like her. She's physically a great athlete there, a long career ahead of her if she stays healthy, head on her shoulder. And she seems to be really knowledgeable of the sport and all of that when you watch some of those interviews. So I'm down for it. I like it. I thought that was the most fabulous thing I saw this weekend. You can let me know. But yeah. But I wanted to do my coffee live and talk about that. I want to talk about one more thing before I get off here for the morning. We can come back later on for a live, and there's some other stuff we're going to put on the channel. I think I was doing a video on this, but maybe it didn't go well. So I was reading Athletes Weekly behind a paywall here. I don't know if you can see that. And this is an article from Tim Adams. It's entitled "A Great Leap," and in it, and I can't really show it too much because I don't want to get in trouble here. But you can get it on. You can subscribe to them. And so in it, they interviewed Carl Lewis, and Carl Lewis is always a great interview. He's gonna give you the sound bites. He's gonna give you the lines that will create some controversy. All in the game. What's going on, my man? What's going on? Let's see where you are here. I'm working with a new system. Let me see if I can get this up here. All right. Arkansas women and Georgia men have now won 3 indoor 400-meter titles in a row. Looking forward to Kaylin Brown and Alia's response outdoor. Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be fabulous outdoors, to be honest with you. Yeah, Arkansas pulling up a lot of trees there. The Georgia guys were looking good too. The relays look really fantastic. I'm not really a great fan of the indoor relay, but and there were some good 200-meter runners there, but I tend not to focus a lot about these 200s anymore because I just feel like it's such a disadvantage if you don't get the outdoor lanes. So yeah, I was wanting to do this thing on car. Let me talk about this thing, and because I'm all over this for a while, and hopefully we can get this video out. But if not, I'll just talk about it quickly. So, and I'm trying to find a juicy quote that he had here, but it doesn't matter. So, as many of you know, if you're steep in the sport, you would have recognized that World Athletics has trialed the takeoff zone in the long jump. So, for a long period of time, we have this 20 cm board. Athletes tries to maximize the board as best as they can, and you go in the pit. They've trialed a 40 cm zone, which they trialed first to test in the Netherlands last year. You could have gone and watched it or watch it on the thing and did your survey. They had all this fan experience. They included a lot of stakeholders. You could give them the feedback on it. And then in Dusseldorf, just a few weeks ago, they implemented the takeoff zone at an official indoor meet. That's the next step in thinking about whether or not we're going to include this as part of the sport moving forward. Matthew Forlani didn't go to that meet. I think he didn't like this idea of the takeoff zone, so he decided that he's going to forego that meet. He didn't go. Mihambo, the Olympic gold medalist from Tokyo silver medalist last year and one of the all-time top long jumpers. She went. She had reservations, but she was pleasantly surprised after seeing this. So we've been discussing about the implementation of this from a standpoint of why is world athletics trying to change fundamentally how the long jump works. People are upset because rightly they point out that if you change from a board from that 20 cm board to a 40 cm zone and you can plop anywhere in the zone, we'll measure it from there, is that what you're doing is eliminating the technical mastery there. Now, they argue that the other stakeholders that are important to the sport are the television people and the people watching on, and even the people watching inside of the stadia. Lots of long jump, you get fouls. And they don't like fouls. Fouls don't work really good for TV. The time you're waiting to see whether or not this is going to be a legitimate thing and trying to explain that away. So there's a legitimacy argument that that might be true, and part of the sport, if it's going to survive, requires television. I'm not getting away with that. So they're thinking that that's the case, and they implemented it recently. Actually, falls went down. They're thinking that athletes will jump a bit further. That's the estimates on some of these models. We'll have to wait and see. Carl is upset, not because he's upset because of this as usual, but he says the real reason, and I'm trying to find the quote again, I don't have it right here in the article. He says the real reason why world athletics is doing this is it. Being honest, I think these changes are happening because world athletics are trying to erase Mike Powell's world record. It wouldn't be Carl Lewis if he doesn't come out with something ridiculous like that. So I don't know. I've never heard that argument as a reason for them to change the sport. I think they're changing it because they feel like too many fouls, it's not a great spectacle. But to say that because athletes can't break the world record is the real reason. They're trying to erase it. And by extension, by Mike, he's also saying himself, because Carl has some of the greatest jumps you will ever see. In my mind, he's the greatest long jumper ever, Carl Lewis, that is. And so the big jumps that you've gotten from him, your Bob Beamons in the 1960s, and obviously Mike Powell, and most of those massive jumps we haven't seen in decades, right? I think it was the Jamaican Tajay Gale that got into a 860 jump. But he's right though to say that you can win a major championship like the World Athletics or Olympics and jump in the 830s, 840s, and he's thinking that the sport really is not anywhere close to where it used to be in terms of the distances. And yeah, on paper, that's true. It could also mean that we just had a moment where we had generational talents like him. I mean, and Mike Powell or whoever, and it's hard to get up back to those numbers. To his point about trying to erase the world record, if that were really the intention of world athletics, I think then we would have seen this happening in a number of other events. We could have then gone to women's 400 meters and a bunch of women's records that if they really felt like there's no way you could touch it and you want to get rid of those records, then they would have done that. That's what, and in fact, I mean, I wouldn't be upset if they were to reevaluate a few of the records on the women's side. I mean, we could talk about that. That would be controversial in doing, but it may also be the right thing. But to say that they're changing the system because because the athletes today can't get up to his level is just garbage, Carl. And I can't get behind that one. I can get behind you saying, look, athletes really should work hard to land on that pit. And we can then go down to psychology or behavioral economics or whatever to tell us like what will happen and so on. But I know they know that we will get bigger jumps in a 40 cm zone because there's more leeway and athletes will be more relaxed. I suspect that's what the curve will look like when they do this. But it's not because they can't reach your lofty 880s and 890s. I just can't see that, right? Uh, let's see. I missed a couple comments from all in the game here. Let's see what you had here. How do I show this? Did I get this? Give me a second. You had said in there maybe Jimmy Ford is Ford looked good. No, I think got lots of stuff to like out of the college system for sure. Outdoors are going to be great this year. Also, a lot of time for them to rest and come back. I would imagine if they're going to make it to the World Championship. So hopefully that works, but sometimes it never. All in the game is saying ridiculous point by call because otherwise, World Athletics would by now try to do something similar to easy. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my point as well. If and I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to get into any legal stuff, but look, we know if you're steep in the sport that there are a bunch of records on the books that shouldn't be on the books. In fact, there is even a record on the books that have been touted for years, and I'm not saying anything about people's drugs if they were taking drugs or anything. I still don't think the Flojo 100-meter record should be on the books. And I'm not coming from an angle that Flojo was doping. I have no proof of that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's a hurricane that happened in Indianapolis when she broke that record. Everybody know it. They did a study. They knew it. They point down to malfunctioning equipment, whatever. IWF had a study before they turned World Athletics. That to me should not be on the books. I really think that also impacted the premier event of the sport, right? I The Evelyn Ashford record should have lasted longer. Flojo probably could have knocked it off at the Seoul Olympics eventually. Then you'd have gotten Elaine breaking the record, and you'd have probably even gotten other women getting closer to the record when you look at the time, right? When you get up as a woman and you see 10:3, you're like, what? I'm sure we would have seen a closer push towards those times, right? And yeah, so I think back to the point, I don't see a real reason why that would have been been the case. I suspect that they're really doing it because they think it will improve the sport. I don't know if you have to like it, but there's a lot of things that change in the sport. The long jump is not anything new. And we have to go back even to the World Indoor Championships there in Belgrade a few years ago when they introduced VDM, video distance measurement, getting rid of the jump, the judge for the takeoff foul. At that point, Carl Lewis was all over the place running his mouth saying there's a problem. But no one is really complaining today about VDM and takeoff faults, right? It just happens, right? The cameras are really good. We find it. You foul, you didn't foul. I think if there is a complaint, I don't think the complaint is nuanced enough. And I say it in the same way we argue about if you follow other sports like association football, like what really constitutes an offside versus what really constitutes a takeoff foul. So if you have a camera that can really, knock out 10,000 frames per second, it will find a hairline on it. Is that good enough for us? That is the question that you really need to ask. And you could really come up with agreements about what that is and what that isn't. But I don't know. I think the fact that we saw this takeoff zone popped out at a real meet is an indication that the sport is changing. I think it's going to happen. I don't know what to say about it, but I think that's where we're gonna get it. Anyway, it's been my pleasure to come on and do a quick live. I will be back later on, hopefully, or sometime in the week. We'll be watching the indoor championships there in China. Not every athlete is going uh, for a number of reasons. I don't think all the European athletes are showing up. I haven't looked at the list for everybody, to be honest with you. But if you're on this side of the world, it starts on March 21st, I believe, in the night around. I think is it after 10 or something like that with women's pentathlon 60-meter hurdles. There'll be heats for 400-meter hurdles and so on. And I'll try to come on. We do a little watch along. So if you're watching it, we can watch and chat, and we'll watch it and enjoy whichever athlete shows up for the World Indoor Championships. The outdoor season is upon us, and it's going to be fantastic. Looking forward to that, and thank you again for joining me. It's been cool to hang out with you for these last half an hour or so, and I hope to see you next time.